Welcome to the channel. We're doing 2010's Relics. And I always think of Relics as, you know, being reflective of the times. When I think of the 2010s, all I can think of is the plurality of postmodernism and how everything exists simultaneously at the same time. So my choices were revivals of, in one case, the 70s and Depression era cover songs album.
I actually did I had something that debuted both in 1994 and in 2015. That's all I'll say. It really sort of rent the fabric of space and time.
I have something that's a self-conscious comment on 70s music, and I've got something that was genuinely new circa 2011.
Okay, here I go. Recorded in France. This is Drinks Hippo Light, which from 2018. And this is a project of Kate LeBon and Tim Presley. Tim Presley was in White Fence, which almost made the choice today, but this is more European parlor-prog. So that light instrumentation, but very experimental, sort of updated the Canterbury sound, maybe a little post-punk in its angularity. It's got percussion loops a la the Tall Dwarfs and light drums. So they did have a drummer as well as the two of them. Lots of effects loops, nimble vocals with delicate harmonies, and overall just really fragile, minimal, and naive. A touch of the shags in there. It's frivolous and fresh and oddly sinister. And it really is the sound of two good songwriters relaxing and indulging in children's play, perhaps on a seesaw. It seems to me this has been workshopped, and I don't know how long it took them, but it feels like it was a week long. And great use of repetition, melody, and pulse. And I keep this in mind. Well, it's a new acquisition in indie or alt rock. And I have Marisa Anderson, who's from Portland. And this is traditional and public domain songs from 2013. And she's just known for great finger picking and part of this sort of revival of American primitive guitar, which John Fahey named. But her guitars are electrified, even though they might be acoustic, but there's this sort of overall effect, electrified, a little bit of distortion in her guitar playing. And it comes off as raunchy and smooth at the same time and continuous like a performance, even though there's some overdubbing. Um, Overall, I just feel that this sort of got punk frisson, and I keep coming back to it because of the mystery. Old times, they deliver the mystery. So it's cover, but the covers are transformed into some kind of distorto Americana. There's a Stephen Foster song on here you might recognize for a while, but then it goes off into improvisation. You might recognize Amazing Grace, but it quickly transforms into something else. It's got flair and virtuosity every once in a while, but she keeps that under wraps. It's familiar and strange, and it's sort of like having the last seat on a bumpy hayride. I keep it in my guitar dominant section, and I love all her stuff. So, new American primitive guitar work.
My first record is Kvelertak's self-titled debut from 2011. You see the art here from John Baisley. He did a lot of metal covers at about this time, in the aughts and in the 2010s. Yeah, so Kvelertak were from Norway. They people refer to them as black and roll, which is true enough, but they're a genuinely sui generis band. Um, But then the song, you'd start off black metal and then it would segue into hard rock riffing, like dual guitar harmonies like Thin Lizzy maybe, or 80s sort of Dio style stuff. Then maybe there'd be like a little like proggy interlude, but then they'd roar into like a punk sing-along chorus. And it's all in Norwegian. And it sounds like a mess when you try to describe it, but it all integrates really well. These guys just sort of exploded onto the scene in 2011. At some point, they parted ways with their vocalist and they got more commercial. And I think since the break, since he left, they haven't been the same. But this debut, is a fantastic record. My second record is Stan Douglas's Luanda Kinshasa. It's from 2013. Um, you don't need to know the backstory of a record to enjoy it, of course, but sometimes it's really interesting to know. So Stan Douglas is not a musician. He is a Canadian artist. He does mostly like video installations, things like that. Um, and the music on here comes from a video piece that he made. So he created a replica of Columbia Studios' this famous studio in Manhattan called the Church, a place where, every jazz musician who recorded for Columbia passed through there. And he hired musicians to play like Miles Davis's electric 1970s bands. They have the look, the feel, the sound, the racial makeup. This is jazz funk with a hint of Afrobeat. A little bit of Africa, a little bit of Latin America, but mostly like tight, propulsive tunes with a hint of darkness, signature 70s Miles, in other words. The idea is that Douglas wanted to comment on this of time in the 1970s when so much of Africa had recently gained independence. It was this like hopeful, messy time. And he also, sort of pointing up the long-standing musical ties between Africa and America. I wish that these songs were longer. Yeah, another great record.
All right. Well, speaking of Africa and North America, Canada to be precise, and strange chronologies, I've got Arakak.
Ah.
And so this is the album Oba Sima, and Arakak is the performer. And if this graphic here looks a bit like a somewhat sloppily photocopied cassette cover, that's exactly what it is. This came out originally in 1994 on a cassette, but apparently something like 3 copies were sold out of 50 produced. So it really didn't have its debut until it was reissued on vinyl by the Awesome Tapes from Africa people. This is a great little record. It's very unique. The performer sort of does outsider left field boogie funk on primitive instruments. It sounds a bit like Michael Jackson demos combined with Grandmaster Flash style rapping in a language you don't understand. We've got 2 sides worth of scrappy outsider funk from Ghana by way of Canada. At any rate, the vocals are very percussive. There's a lot of repetition in the music, and it has this kind of incantatory effect, despite the fact that it's really very much geared for the dance floor. So I don't really know what else to liken it to, except that it will get you moving, but at the same time floating. The second selection is also an example of, I guess, primitive electronics, now that I come to think about it. It's New Orleans' own Mr. Quintron, who builds his own instruments, and the Weather Warlock, which is played by atmospheric changes, the Drum Buddy, a light activated percussive device, synthesizer. This album here is from 2014, but it harkens back to his earliest stuff in the mid 90s. Spellcaster 2, Spellcaster 1 came out in 1995, I think. He's forsaken the terrestrial realm for outer space. This was evidently made, as it's called, subtitled Death in Space, and it was evidently made as a soundtrack to a film that no one is likely to ever see, Immersion of the Miraculous. Because anyway, it's a lot of fun to just most of the music is very soundtracky and atmospheric, but it's a very neat conjuring up of otherworldly dimensions and spaces. You know, you can't really dance to it, but you can kind of shuffle around, or hanging out with crocodiles and nutria down in New Orleans, or just pretend that that's the kind of life you lead. This is a good way to do it.
Everybody say spellcaster, caster.
Well, his house slash performance space is called the Spellcaster Lodge. It's like a pineapple sort of sprouting out, and oh, you have to dance to it. I think it's required. Yes, it is. It definitely promotes booty shaking. Oh, it's the one with the chicken on the front, or the chick.
It's got this encrusted ball.
There's like a bird being a little chick, like a small bird. Well, I live with 13 dead cats, a purple dog who wears spats. They're living out in the hall, and I can't stand it anymore.
My landlady called me up. She tried to hit me with the mop. Well,
He's like a living straw-haired counterpoint.
Collaborate and listen. Nice to see you with the brand new edition. Something grab to hold me tightly, flow like a harpoon, daily and nightly. Will it ever stop you? I don't know. Turn off the light and I'll glow. To the extreme, to rock the mic like the handle. Light up the stage and wax the chumps like a candle.
Negative ion, negative ion, negative ions.
Dead air. Hair.